so I first met Srila Prabhupada looking for a school, for I had a 5-year-old daughter, and this was in 1970. And we were hippies, hardcore hippies, self-sufficient, living large on a farm up in Lake Stevens, not too far from here. And we had everything we needed there, but we weren't happy. And something was missing. And it came time for my daughter to go to school. And so we enrolled her in the local public school. And this was before I knew the devotees. I'd had contact off and on years with devotees, but didn't really go to the temple. And after about 2 months of being in school, I had a conference with my daughter's teacher who said, "You're teaching your daughter duplicitous life, and this isn't going to work. She comes to school like a hippie, bringing a thermos of milk from your cows, but she wants the milk like the other kids, the 5-cent milk from the Dairy Gold Dairy. And you send her with cookies from home, but she wants Oreo cookies like the rest of the kids." And so she said, "You're going to have to resolve this because there's going to be a conflict." And I said, "Well, that's no problem. She won't come back to school." So we kept her home from school, and the school called authorities on us and said we had to put her in a school by the time she was 7. That's the law in this state. So I began to think, what am I going to do? There are no hippie schools. And, you know, what are we going to do? Teach this kid life? And so we started a fair at the Pike Place Market. We made jewelry at that time. We were self-sufficient hippies. And devotees used to come through the market once in a while. I believe Vishnu Janaswami came through the market one time, chanting right through the Pike Place Market. Everybody just, wow. And I had some friends who later on took initiation, Prabhupada and Jagadishvari, maybe some of you know them. And we grew up together ever since childhood, and they moved up here to be hippies with us. And he had started reading Bhagavad Gita, and started preaching to my daughter, and taking her over to their house on a farm in Bothell, teaching her all about Krishna. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't know if I want this fellow teaching my kid about this Krishna. I don't know anything about this. And we had already learned all the different yogas and read all the books by all the yogis and gone to see all of the swamis that came from India and preaching. And somehow every time we went to hear them or read their books, something was wrong. Something was missing. And you just, you know, you hear the truth, you know it's the truth. And when you hear some nonsense, something doesn't sit right. And so we had resolved to become these hippies and just live by ourselves and figure out, well, we'll find God in here probably. And so my daughter started saying, I want to go to that Krishna temple. And I'm like, We were at this fair at the Pike Place Market, and the devotees came through. And the devotee came up to me and said, Om Purnamadaham Purnamidam Purnam Purnamudachate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate. And I remember that from that day. I really never, I never forgot it. And I said, how do you know what that is? And he says, because my spiritual master, he shows me the book. I said, that's okay. Here's some money. And he left the book. And then I said, wait a minute. Don't you Krishna people have a school? And he says, actually, yes, we do have a school. And I said, well, where is it? He said, Dallas, Texas.
Oh.
I said, Dallas, Texas? Oh, I don't know about this. He says, I'll tell you what, we're having a Sunday feast at our temple. Why don't you come up there after the fair is over and ask some of the devotees up there? And so we did that. We went up to the temple, and as I walked in the door of the temple, it was on Roosevelt Way at that time, Makula was the president at that time. And he was reading Krishna book, and I washed my feet in this huge conch shell and stepped into the temple and got hit in the chest with a pillow, knocked back. And I thought, wow, Krishna temple, knock you out when you come in the door. And it turned out he was telling the story of Jambavan and he was pretending to throw rocks.
Oh.
Him and Krishna were throwing rocks back and forth, and the pillow was one of the rocks. I guess I was Jambavad. I walked in the door and boom. And so we had the feast, listened to the lecture, and Kamsari was cooking, and Petraka was there, Gopishwar, few old devotees. And I guess Kamsari was cooking, but he really wasn't a cook. And I was very interested in food, and we had these yellow potatoes that had whole cinnamon sticks, whole cloves, whole coriander seeds, tons of turmeric, and this funny flavor, which later turned out to be hing.
Oh.
And I ate this prasadam, respectfully, and then I got sick. And I went out in the back alley, and I had to throw up. I'd never eaten food like this before, all these spices and whole cinnamon sticks, and the people next to me said, "You eat the spices too, you know." I'm like, okay. And a brahmachari walks down the alley while I was over there kind of throwing up, and he says, "Oh, Mataji, you're getting so purified." And I thought, these Krishna people are really strange, the way they look at everything. So we went back in, and I started talking to Mukunlal about the school. I said, "Do you Krishna people have a school?" He said, "Yes, we do, and our spiritual master is coming to Oregon in 6 weeks. Why don't you come and talk to him about the school?" No one knew very much about the school. So Prabhupada was appearing in a Baptist church in Salem, Oregon. And the devotees had rented this church, and I guess against the parishioners' approval, because half of the church filled up with Christians, and the other half of the church was devotees. And so I had seen pictures of Prabhupada on the back of some of the books, and I thought that Prabhupada was a very big person, because he was, had a very large head, and he never showed any pictures of his body, just his head. So I'm kind of excited. I decided I'm sitting in the front row, right in the front, so I can hear what this Swami has to say. And then I'm going to ask him some questions about the school. And so I'm nervous. And the chanting starts way on the other side of the church. And I guess Prabhupada is coming in. And all the devotees are jumping up and down and chanting, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking to see this big Swami from India, and I can't see him. And this whole procession moves all along the Christians on the side and goes, and then Prabhupada leaves them and walks up on the stage and sits on an asana. And at that time his accent, his Indian accent, was still quite thick, and I was not accustomed to hearing that kind of accent, so it was difficult for me to understand what he had to say. But I was listening intently, and I can honestly say I didn't understand very much of what he had to say. But then it came question and answer period. And so the Christians, Prabhupada said, "Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Chant and be happy. Are there any questions or comments?" And all the Christian hands went up. So I'm looking, thinking this is going to be interesting. And then Prabhupada said yes, and one Christian man stood up and he said, "What do you think of Jesus Christ?" And now I'm listening, because Jesus is our guru, right? We all love Jesus so much. He's our spiritual teacher our whole life. And Prabhupada said, "Lord Jesus Christ is our guru, because he is teaching us pure love of God the Father." And everybody was silent. So another Christian stands up and he says, "Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, and only by me can you come to the Father." Prabhupada said, "Yes, that is all right." And so the devotees were chuckling. And I'm looking at the devotees, and I'm looking at the Christians, and the Christians were pretty agitated. So another fellow stands up and says, "Are you trying to say that you're right and Jesus Christ is right too?" Prabhupada said, "Yes, why not?